Vikings at Chicago. This is my best bet of the week. But, Marco, you've been a real critic of Brett Favre. Where's your opinion at after his second biggest yardage day in his entire career last week?
Well, I actually said it last week on a podcast and a radio show. I got to give Favre credit. I've bashed him all year. What he's done the last 2 weeks.
I heard he's upset about that.
Well,
he's been emailing.
He's even emailing. That's okay. He'll get over, just as long as he doesn't send me any text.
Very good.
Yeah, but Favre, it did. In fact, he saved the season last week with that, heroic comeback. And really, at 3-5, they're still alive because this division is bad. I mean, Chicago's doing it with smoke and mirrors, the games that they're winning, and Green Bay, they're winning. I know they won big last week, and you were happy about that against the Cowboys, but that was against the Cowboys. This team still has some problems that I don't think they're going to run away and hide with the division because of the injuries that Green Bay has. So
to me, this is a value play. You're right, psychologically, Minnesota still, their dreams haven't been crushed, to use our new terminology. If anything, there's a sense of momentum. And the Moss thing, after winning the game without him, it's a good riddance probably for most. Mm-hmm. So I think the momentum's there, and quite simply, this team's underrated. Vegas ranks them the 11th best team in football. ESPN has them the 22nd best team. They're the most underrated team in Vegas's eyes in the NFL. And when you have a team that motivationally is focused and underrated, to me that's a play. The reason it's my best bet is I'm not a big fan of the Bears. So I think they're slightly overrated, and that just comes to be value. So my question to you, what do you think about the Bears?
Well, the Bears, and this is one of the points that, I lean with you. I agree with the Minnesota side in this game. Chicago has trouble with teams that can run the ball well. Minnesota owns one of the top 3 running backs in the league, if not the best running back in the league, in Adrian Peterson.
So Johnson, Peterson, who's 3?
Well, I threw it out there. He's probably 1 or 2, okay?
Right.
So, point taken. He's one of the best, sir.
I tell you, he looks like a video game. The way he runs. I mean, he's pretty odd. He might be the best running back, best pure. Like if you said, show me a play and impress me, I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone more impressive.
I agree with you 100%. I just still go back to last year. I wonder what happened to him in those last 4 games last year.
No, there's certainly issues, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
But for here, they're going to be able to run the ball on Chicago. If they run the ball first and Favre plays smart, that's going to create openings with the passing game. He's getting more in sync with these receivers. I mean, the throw that won the game last week, that was on both ends. A perfect throw, perfect catch, in between defender. It was just, they're getting it right now. And this is the game they need. And if they go to 4-6, I wouldn't want to step in front of this team because they have been in every ball game they've played this year.
4-6.
If they win this game, or no, sorry, they'd be 4-5. I'm sorry.
Okay.
4-5. But their 2 biggest losses were to the Jets and the Patriots.
All right, so let me make a point there. They had games on the road against the Jets, against the Pats, and against the Packers, New England and Green Bay and New York. They outgained all 3 on the road.
Right.
So I do have a pause, and I'll tell you, and it's about home road, but finish your point.
The point being that, when you mentioned the Jet and the Pats game, those were 9 and 10-point margins, but there were scores late in the game that took it. They had a chance. They had the ball and had a chance to drive in both of those games.
And that's where value at the first level comes from wins and losses that are deceiving, and then the way they're deceiving oftentimes is turnovers, and that's the thing we were preaching about the Giants is they looked bad in some games when it was all about turnovers, and now a lot of people think they're the best team in the NFC. And it's also with yardage and fourth down type plays that either happen or don't happen at the goal line can swing games. And if it falls either pro or con a couple times in their first 6 games, there's usually a real misimpression of how good a team is. And I think Minnesota's underrated.
Minnesota's underrated. And I'll point out people like to look at last year's scores, and people are going to say, and a lot of people believe that Minnesota was a better, last year's edition obviously was a better, and they lost in Chicago last year.
Which is my concern, but go ahead.
But I'm going to point out why I'm going to dispel that. The one thing we've said about Favre was the big thing about going to Minnesota is he's going to play indoors, because remember how bad he played in that cold game, the playoff game against the Giants last year at Green Bay. He's not going to have those cold weather games. Last year's game at Chicago was in the end of December when it's frigid cold in Chicago. He's catching them in the middle of November, his trip to Chicago this year. So weather's not going to be as big of a factor as it was last year.
I didn't have that one. That's a good one. I still am concerned. The last time Minnesota won a road game was Week 8 in 2009. So, I mean, quite frankly, that this is a team that in that dome they play quite well. Now, they did outgain 3 really good teams. So I think that is preventing me from making this, let's say, a game of the month type play or a game of the year type play. But it is a cause of concern is that in this series, the home team has covered 4 straight by an average of 15 points. So that's the one thing that causes me pause, but I think there was enough value here that I'm projecting Minnesota, and I'm making it my best bet.
Yeah. I will tell you this much, because I've been involved in some of the Chicago Bear games this year, and I've been watching a lot of them, and it's not fun because the Bears are not a good ball club. They're 5-3, but I can honestly tell you they could very easily be 3-5 in the games they've played. They've been the opposite of Minnesota with the turnovers.
We got 2 minutes. Before we went on air, you were explaining to our producer, Dustin, about how to know when a cookie's done. And I think I really think that that's something that you're clearly an expert at handicapping and cookies. Could you explain to me real quick how you tell if a cookie's done?
Why? Dustin was talking about his wife making cookies, and she has a habit of burning the cookies. And I said, Dustin, that's a common mistake people make because...
oh, son, one day you'll understand this. Go ahead.
They look in there, and the cookie's doesn't look done. But it is done. You bring it out. It says, 7 minutes. You bring it out at 7. While it sits on the baking sheet, it finishes its cooking, and it gets to where it's supposed to be.
Now, what happens if there's a guy there, let's say his name's Marco, and he eats the cookies right after they come out?
Well, they're too hot right there. You have to wait a little bit, and then you get a big glass of ice-cold milk, and then you're set.
Now, when you wait, do you wait over the cookie sheet, like waiting, or do you go sit and give it 10 minutes?
I'll generally give it 10 minutes, but if I'm really, really anxious for the cookie, I'll get a little piece of paper and fan it to help it along the way.
Now it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we're going to be talking, Sunday Night Football, Pats at Steelers.